Welcome to the third episode of the Indoencers Podcast. Today, I'm joined by an extremely popular playback singer who has sung for some of the nation's top composers, including AR Rahman, Ajay, Harris Jairaj, among many others. Predating his playback career, he arrived at Chennai from Madhya Pradesh, initially to undergo his degree in biotechnology, only to decide later on that music was what he wanted to pursue, after which he joined AR Rahman's KM Music Conservatory. To talk about the journey that has led him to being one of India's finest playback singers, I am joined by the one and only Abhay Jodhpurkar. So, what I like to do on my podcast is take it right back. Take it right back to your earliest days, to your musical beginnings. And you, perhaps, unlike many other singers, were not formally trained in singing, and at least in your early childhood days. However, your grandfather, who you say was a very good singer.
Absolutely. So I think while growing up, the biggest blessing that I had was my grandfather, because while he was around, we would just, listen to music, and he would just, expose me to some of the greatest music, Marathi, Natya Sangeet, and some of the classical music, and some Pakistani ghazal artists that, we would just listen to on the tape recorder, and even the FM, and whatever we heard, whatever we, discussed back in the day, became the foundation for my musical career, I guess. But it was never planned that I would eventually follow my career in playback singing. But it's just it was, I think, destiny's calling. But regardless, music was always a hobby, and I was always passionate about it. And I think I have to give credit to my grandfather, because he was also the principal for the school that I used to go to, and he would just, put me in the front line every time we have to do, there's an assembly, or every time there's a, gathering, or I have to recite a poem or a bhajan, or whatever, the welcome greeting song, or even the national anthem for that matter. So, because I think he must have recognized some spark in me that probably, I wouldn't have been aware of. So I think credits to him for spotting that talent in me and, brushing it up and training me in my childhood throughout.
You mentioned just right now that you recite poems and sing bhajans in assemblies, and I've read that you gave your first stage performance at the age of 5, and throughout your schooling days you were often participating in singing competitions and things like that. So was public performance something that came naturally to you, or did you have that?
No, I guess I would say it just happened organically. Like, how we would just casually sit at home and listen to some songs and, just casually sing at home. It was just like that. He just put me on the stage one fine day, and initially those 15 seconds of, the adrenaline rush that you experience on the stage, I went through that. And then the next thing is I was already enjoying it, the next minute of, singing it. So it just happened so organically that I'd never realized that, it was a task or something like that. And ever since I've been, eased up in opening up on stage and then, performing and even talking. But of course, that initial rush is always there before getting on the stage, which is very natural and something that a lot of artists, use as a, like an induction to getting on the stage and then, just getting there. So I think that nervousness also means that, okay, you give a damn about it, or it's so important for you, or you take it so seriously that it affects you and it shakes you up from, and the jitters down your spine. So I guess I was meant for doing this all my life, but it was always a hobby or a passion, never a profession.
So I mean, you weren't formally trained. So when you were a child, often if you're formally trained, you're taught to practice every day or things like that. Without the formal training, how did you gain that discipline to sing regularly?
So I guess I would have to thank my genes for that, and it's mostly a God gift when you can sing the way you do from your childhood. Because I remember my grandfather used to be surprised at the speed, the way I would pick up the songs. For instance, there were some classical songs which were really difficult to sing for a child also, even after training in Hindustani classical or Carnatic classical. But I was naturally, so fast at picking up those gamakas and those jatis that he noticed that, okay, this must be a God gift. Or my grandfather also used to sing back in the day, and he used to sing a lot of classical. So I would say that I think I've inherited all those, the roles or the vocal drills from him. So it just naturally flew, and I didn't have to work on it or I didn't have to practice. Even till date, I would say vocal warm up is the only thing that I do. But everything else that I get, it's all God gift, and my throat actually functions like that. So I would say that thanks to the Almighty for blessing me with that kind of ease in my singing, that you give me a piece of music, I can prepare it and deliver it in the very next half an hour or whatever time is given to me.
And in your childhood, I've also read that you were fascinated by South Indian instruments. Could you tell us
Absolutely.
what instrument specifically and any particular reason why?
So I have no idea. So sometimes you feel like, after when you visit a place, you feel like you have been there already, or you feel a strange connection with certain places or certain vibes that every time listen to something, also it feels familiar. So I don't know, I feel like there's some sort of memory that is, already, restrained in my soul, or something which I probably, relate to, because every time I would hear, I remember Nadaswaram or a tawil or ghatam or even mridangam for that matter. Every time I hear these instruments, I would be so excited, and I would love the sound of it. And somehow I was always drawn towards it. So I think must have been in my previous generations that I must have been a classical instrumentalist or a musician or whatever, because that kind of attachment or attraction towards a particular thing is related to you. Like, I'm a very spiritual person that way, so I believe that there must have been some connection with it in my previous birth. That's why I ended up going to Chennai for my education, and then it just felt so, the entire vibe and the entire culture felt like home for me, which is very strange. Like, for a North Indian to feel at home in Chennai is a very rare thing to happen. Like, most of my friends used to mock me for that. That looks like you're a South Indian, and you feel like you belong here. So what is happening? Like, are we like, are you like getting the vibes correctly about yourself, or you're yet to discover yourself? And very strange things like that. But yeah, so I think must have been some of my previous janma that I must have been a South Indian. My soul is very South Indian. Yeah.
And as you were singing, I think we touched on it beforehand, but you were singing in singing competitions at schools, and
Right.
apparently you're winning them all. And
Some of them, most of them. Yeah.
So at this point, were you already aware of your singing talents, or was this sort of
I
the
was.
trigger?
So as I said, music has always been passion, right? So I would just go to the competitions, and my music teachers would be very, like finicky about it every time I try to step into another zone. Like, I was just an artist who was trying to explore different areas of art. For instance, I used to be into painting and sketching and drawing, sometimes dancing, sometimes, just random stuff like rangoli or mehendi for that matter. I was just too attracted towards arts of any sorts, visual and audio and all sorts of arts. So whatever just came to me naturally, I would just take it up and explore. And even when it comes to photography, I was very keen on watching stuff and good clicks and frames. And somehow I would always be drawn towards watching movies also, for that instance, because it's just art and a lot of music, a lot of artistic fields coming together, and the amalgamation of that ends up being a movie. I was always fascinated with watching movies also. So all the departments, the teachers would, so there was a time when I had to pick one at a time. I would end up participating in all the competitions, but my music teacher was very keen that, no, you have to be, with us, because I'm not going to let you go anywhere else. You were meant to do this. You're born for this. And I would still take it lightly, because I knew that, I used to watch all these competitions, and like on TV also, we had so many reality shows where in every season there were so many great talents. And of course we can compare, right? Like, I knew where I was, and I knew that I can't sing that good as, the kind of talent we have in our country. So I was always insecure or not sure about my singing per se. but it just made me happy being a part of music and being a part of the art. So for me, it was always about living in that moment and enjoying the art form rather than trying to prove it that I'm a singer or I'm a painter or I'm an artist. So it was just love for the art and just passion, but never realized that I would actually be so good in singing until unless Rahman sir spotted me. And that's when when you get the validation from someone like an AR Rahman sir, then you look back and then you think about that, okay, maybe there's something that I need to work on, and maybe. So I guess that's the one validation I was looking for. Until then, I was not sure of being successful in an artistic career, which is why I always pursued the career and academics more than my hobbies, or rather, I never knew that I could have a safe career in as an artist. So in my mind, in the back of my mind, I always had this thing that, okay, I have to study first and make sure that I have a backup, and only then will I venture out into the artistic world. And in fact, it was the other way around in my family. My parents wanted me to pursue music and study arts, or do something related to extracurricular activities. But it was me who was stubborn, and he was like, no, no, no. I think I need a safe career backup option first, and then. So that's how SRM University happened. And but again, destiny had to take its course, and everything that happened eventually was something that was not in my hands. So I was just going with the flow of what course of events happened, and I am where I am today because of, I guess, my destiny.
Yeah, and you talk about your interest in these sort of different
Yeah.
artistic forms. And even today, I've heard you say in recent interviews that you're interested in photography. So,
Yeah.
how much do you think that sort of childlike curiosity has helped
That
you throughout your career?
I think it's very important for every artist to have that childlike curiosity, because that's when you grow, that's when you learn things, and that's when you pick up stuff. When you treat yourself as a just like a miniature of of a talent box or whatever, or just an artist who's willing, who's thirsty for knowledge, who's willing to learn as much as they can. The moment you think that, okay, I have reached a point, or I have become a certain amount of talented, or if you feel like you have achieved something, that's when you stop growing, and that's when progress starts happening. So I guess it's very important to be grounded and to get a reality check on where you are, and of course at the same time being content with how much you have achieved so far. But you should never be proud of it, or you should never think that it's a great achievement, because that will kind of stop your progress, or that will stop you from learning. So it's very important to have that that childlike attitude, and that the innocence, or the naiveness, so to say. I've learned from Rahman sir, I would say, because Rahman sir has always, like, every time we record, we always find this cute child in him who is always willing to learn something. Like, he's so updated with the latest gadgets, and he's well versed with everything that's new and all the updates. So that kind of enthusiasm is just so enriching and so inspiring, that we have also, as students, we have inculcated that, and we'll always remain students of music before anything else. Yeah.
Just touching on like the different artistic forms once again, do you think
Right.
engaging, so, because sometimes as musicians you might think that you do only music and you focus 100% on it, but how much do
Mhm.
you think your engagement with painting, with photography and things like that has impacted your viewpoint on music?
I guess as an artist, I would say that it's a huge canvas of creativity that blends into the work, whatever work we do. So as an artist, if you try to bleed into other field, and if you try to explore what you are good at, you probably learn something subconsciously that you pick up, and then you never realize that how it might actually help you in becoming a better artist in the music field. For instance, as a painter, or as a videographer, as a photographer, I've always felt that every time I capture a frame, every time I try to edit it, or every time I'm trying to paint some colors on canvas, I feel like it can be done in so many ways, and so many variations can be done, and the possibility of doing it is just endless. So while you explore that, you subconsciously, there are certain things which shift in your mind or in your brain, or something that you learn every time you're exploring it. So somehow it just makes a shift in your musical knowledge as well. And that's how I would say that sometimes every time I record new song, visually, those colors somehow, come in forms of, let's say, a painting or a picture or a sunset. If the color pattern, the clouds and nature is so vibrant, and it's so, deeply ingrained in our minds, and it's so inspiring that, somehow you end up getting inspired by that, and then somehow that, comes through you in your singing. So I guess I can't be like analytical about it, and I can't jot it down on paper that okay, this is what made this
Mhm.
difference. But I think on a subconscious level, it somehow makes the, like, inspires you or moves you or does something which helps you in growing as a singer. So I hope you get what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
just moving on further in your life, as you alluded to, you moved to
Mhm.
Chennai for college,
Yeah.
and where you initially majored in biotechnology at SRM. But
Hmm.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around this because I figure that there are probably closer places where you can major in
Right.
biotechnology. So why
Yeah.
Chennai?
Chennai, because at that point of time, that was the best college I was getting for biotechnology. And we
Mm.
did some research. I was also selected for Manipal University. And but the labs of biotechnology were not that great, apparently. And when it comes to the rankings of college, SRM University topped when it comes to biotech department. And I heard about the, HODs and everything. I did my research and I found out that SRM in private colleges, SRM is the best option we have. So we just gave it a shot. It was just something that we went along with it. And then me and dad, I remember we went to Chennai all the way from Pune. I was looking through some other colleges at that point of time, and then we went to Chennai, and then everything was just lined up, and it just felt like Chennai welcomed us, and people were so warm about it. And even the people who we made some South Indian friends in the train while we were traveling, and they were extremely warm and sweet, and they guided us through the entire, the process of admission and everything, because they already knew they had some folks related to the college. So we're still in touch, and such warmness and such warmth, I guess. And also, as I said, when I went to Chennai and when we went to the college, we loved the infrastructure. The labs were great, and the professors, everything about the college was perfect. And I just felt like it was my calling, and we just went ahead with it because uh, South Indian education is something which is highly appreciated even in the North, and people respect, colleges and their education system. So that was something which we always knew, but it was just a big step because being the only child of my parents, they were very skeptical about it. They were like, "We don't want to send you off so far, and we don't know how it's gonna be. We can't even quickly come and see you if something comes up, if there's an emergency." But we just took that leap of faith, I guess, and because it felt right. And as I said, I felt like I'm back home already when I was in Chennai, because South Indian music and Carnatic music and Bharatnatyam is something which I've always admired, and I felt like I'm deeply associated with it. So we just decided in that moment, and it was just an instinctive decision, which turned out to be the best decision, I guess, of our lives. Moving to Chennai. Yeah.
Yeah, so you moved to Chennai, and I've heard
Yeah.
you say that it was in Chennai where you say you
Mhm.
rediscovered your passion for Carnatic music.
Yes.
And
Yes.
you've mentioned that you were exposed to Natya Sangeet and Marathi
Mhm.
Abhangs when you were younger. But what
Right.
sort of exposure did you have to Carnatic music prior to coming to
Right.
Chennai?
So prior to coming to Chennai, I had just heard like the snippets or a glimpse of it, like how on Indian television also we would every time we would put on a South Indian channel, there would be classical song, or just a glimpse of it, which I always got a taste of. But I could never explore it because there was no proper awareness about it, or nobody spoke about it. Nobody knew the basics of South Indian music or Carnatic music. And I still remember, like, I had a teacher before. So after my 12th grade, I had just joined this music class for a couple of months. wherein I just was taught the basics of Hindustani classical. So I would just discuss, these things with my music teacher. Her name is Sulochana Moge. I'm still in touch with her, and she has taught me some of the greatest lessons of Hindustani classical music. So we would often discuss about differences between South Indian and North Indian music, and how they are, they're the same versions of each other, yet so complexly different from each other, and how they came about, how the evolution of Indian music happened. And in real terms, if you talk about the real definition of Hindustani music, then Carnatic music is the original music
Yeah.
of Indian music, because Hindustani was later on influenced by the Arabic music, which is how I won't call it originally Indian classical music, but if there's an Indian classical music, then it has to be Carnatic music. So that was something which was very fascinating. And then I read something about the Mail Kartas, which is thats. So in Hindustani, you have only 12 thats. But in Carnatic, you have 72, which is 12C7, which is the combination of all the seven possible notes of the 12 notes that we have. So that is a exact mathematical, division, which felt more apt. And somehow I felt like I relate to Carnatic more than Hindustani. So that always intrigued me about finding out what's the evolution and what's the entire thesis, or how it all came about. Then after coming to Chennai, that's when these I got all these answers. And so to answer your question, how I was exposed to these things after coming to Chennai was through my college mates. They would just give me their random collections, and I would ask them, from good people, friends with good musical taste. They would just give me Tamil, Telugu, Kannada, Malayalam, all sorts of songs, and I heard them all, and I felt like, wow, man, this is the real deal. And that's when I rediscovered that, okay, I think this is something that I want to do, because it was in its purest form. And when you hear like an unadulterated or a cleaner or a more raw version of music, you feel like, wow, this is the ultimate calling. So I think that's when it hit me that, okay, I want to do this. And then I joined KM Music Conservatory and then pursued it. Again, not knowing what the future is going to be like, but I was just so inspired by it that I had to take it up as a part-time option, for learning or being in touch with music somehow.
So were you frequently going to like Carnatic concerts, perhaps in the December season? And
Yes, the Margai season.
yeah.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
So who
And
are the
yeah,
who
go
are the
on.
artists that you'd most look forward to?
So it was all a mixture of artists. For instance, there were Soumya ma'am, then there was Bombay Jayashree ma'am. Then there was so many artists that I can't think of the names right now, but I have heard a lot of Carnatic stuff also, which was given by some friends. Arjun Chandy, Nuff's vocal music coach, he had introduced me to, I'm forgetting the name, but a brilliant vocalist. Um, can't think of his name on top of my mind right now, but MS is someone I've heard a lot. And I think was goddess, and nobody can touch where she, was. So MS's versions of all the, bhajans and all her renditions. And yeah, so MS was the biggest influence, I think, when it comes to Carnatic music, which I have heard mostly on YouTube or audios. And then live singing, yes, some of the artists that I mentioned. Yeah.
Yeah, and as you just touched on, you decided to go to camp inspired by the music around you.
Yes, inspired by
And
music.
I've read that you are pursuing your biotechnology degree while going to camp, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes,
So what
that's
sort
right.
of challenges did that bring? Because I imagine that must have been very hectic, very busy.
Yeah, it was very difficult indeed, because I remember biotechnology is not an easy stream to do engineering in, because until 12th standard I had only maths as my background, and I felt like exploring into a different um, academical background or something. So I thought that, okay, maybe biotechnology would be a good option. And but then again, I had to study biology from scratch, and then maths was always also there. So it became too much on my plate, and somehow that kind of overwhelmed me, and that's exactly why I tried to move my attention towards music because it kind of healed me and it was an escape from my hectic college life. So while I was doing BTech part time Saturday Sunday 2 days I used to get when I would go to KM and travel all the way from Putheri to Kodambakam, and whatever time I got, I'll dedicate that for music and then come back. And it was 40 kilometers of journey, which is very far. And I used to switch trains every time I would come because that was the fastest way of going there. On road was just impossible. So of course it was very challenging, but I think music kept me going. And while traveling, also I would listen to all these Carnatic songs and Rahman sir's work and Ilayaraja sir's work, which kind of kept me at peace with the whatever was going on and all the chaos which was happening during the weekdays. Weekends would be my my leisure time or my music time or my healing time, wherein I would just immerse myself in music and back to square one, back to college on Monday, and then starting the whole studies. So there were challenges. It was very difficult, but somehow I sailed through it thanks to the music, that we all love and that keeps us going. But there were times when I was detained from my college because of lack of attention, because lack of attendance, because I would have to bunk some classes in order to attend some concerts or some rehearsals, because there was a Qawwali group formed by Munna Shaukat Ali Khan Sahab, who taught us Qawwali, and we would be expected at the rehearsals to learn those Qawwalis in order to perform them. So there were times when I had to skip my classes, and of course music was a bigger priority for me at that point of time, and it somehow just made more sense to be attending music classes more than biotechnology classes. But somehow I sailed through it, and I got a lot of arrears as well. But my department, some of them were really supportive, and they knew that I'm singing for Rahman sir. So they gave me some freedom, and they were sweet about certain things. Of course, I had to go through the entire torture of doing everything that a student does, but somehow managed to pass it all with a 7-pointer. So yeah, but it
And
was tough, man. Like I remember there was a time when like I had to finish a semester exam and then straight away leave for a recording at Panchatan Raman's studio, and then I had to be there for the entire day and night, and then by 6 a.m. we finished the recordings, and then I take the first local, and then on the way I'm studying and preparing for my semester exam, and somehow managed to give the exam and then again come back. So there was just a lot of difficult situations, but I guess hard work always pays off, and Rahman sir noticed that. He knew that me and Nikita Gandhi, we were the only students who were pursuing academics, and part time we used to come to KM for music. And he would see us during recordings when there were breaks. He would see us making notes or studying some other materials. So he was curious. He would always know about what the students are up to. And then he found out that okay, both of us are juggling with these two careers at the same time. So he was extra supportive to both of us because of that one reason also, which is great. I think as a mentor, when someone encourages something, then it means a lot. And I think from that support from Rahman sir meant the world to me that at that point of time, that he was willing to give me some extra time. And there were times when he has waited for me when I couldn't come for the recordings. So that's extremely kind and sweet of him to do that, which he doesn't have to do. So yeah.
yeah, and as you just mentioned, you specialized in Qawwali music and you joined the KM Sufi ensemble, if I'm not mistaken. And in a previous podcast I recorded, I had interviewed somebody called Edwin Lewis, who is another graduate from the KM Music Conservatory. And he told me that during his time at KM, he would go and listen to the Sufi ensemble, and he would often go into tears because the performances were so moving. Having been in the ensemble yourself, how would you describe that feeling of divinity?
Yeah. So music has always, it has the power of healing you. And somehow if there's something inside you that is, bothering you or that is not healed, it kind of, empowers you, and it gives you strength. So I can relate to Edwin when he says that, Sufi music used to, give him to tears. So like talking about the kind of music that I like also is something on the lines of devotional music or music that makes you cry. I still remember we used to listen to Khwaja Mere Khwaja in rehearsal and while we are singing, and then one of us would just break down and would just get so healed by the music that it's impossible to hold it together. It could be so overwhelming sometimes that all that negativity comes out through your tears or through your crying. So it has that kind of power that brings that breaks you down and extracts all the negativity out of you. And Sufi music has that kind of power. And I think Ajay Atul's music has always made me cry. Rahman sir's music has always made me cry, and especially these devotional numbers or kavalis or bhajans for that matter. So so yeah, it's really difficult at times when you're also on stage. You can't lose your composure and start crying because you have to hold that note and you have to have that presentation because it's a group. So it becomes very challenging at times. But I guess if in the learning process you have already vented out everything, that's when you achieve a state where you are stable after singing so much and after practicing so much, which is why it's really important to practice. And I remember during Qawwali lessons we would be so vulnerable, emotional, and then after the rehearsals are done, we some of them were not okay with crying in public, so they would just go to the loo, cry it out, come back, and then we would just peacefully come back and then start performing again. So there have been times like that, and it's crazy how music is so powerful, and it empowers you in so many ways. And yeah, so again, coming back to your question, yeah, it is difficult in the beginning when you have certain areas, vulnerable areas to heal. But after you heal yourself, it becomes all right, and then that's when you really connect with the music. It does make you cry, and that's why audience gets so affected, and some of the audience people also cry, because of that power. Yeah.
And while you were at CAM, you're also doing
Hmm.
Sufi music, but you were
Right.
part of a group called Nafs, a vocal ensemble
Right.
conducted by
Hmm.
Arjun Chandy. And you've
Yes,
you've called Nafs the best thing that happened in your life.
it
Why do you
it
say
did
that?
indeed. Because as I said, I was not formally trained when it comes to vocal lessons. Although we were being taught in Qawwali, how to sing and what exactly are the compositions, but we never were exposed to the techniques that go into your voice and in building up your voice, because it's a very complex instrument. Vocal cords are something which you need to train them. It's a muscle. You have to indulge it correctly. Otherwise, you might harm your vocals in the long run. So there were a lot of things that Nufs introduced me to. Like, for instance, singing harmonies was something which I never thought I would do, because I was always exposed to only Hindustani or Indian music. But when I was exposed to Western music, then jazz, and then choral singing, that's when it opened up another, another variety of music that, kind of opened up my vision about how you can perceive music, and arrangements and, vocal arrangements came into picture. And that's when I realized that, wow, I think for my ear training, this was the best thing that happened to me. And also for my voice, because Arjun Chandy is a genius, and he taught us some of the most priceless and important techniques that are really essential in order to deliver and have a healthy singing. Because there were times when I would harm my voice and sing correctly or belt it so much that I would lose my voice after a rehearsal. So he corrected me at certain points, and he would just tell me how to switch from head voice to false voice, and how to remain stable, and how not to tire your voice, and how to project it in a healthy way. So these things which I never got exposed to or never had the time to learn, I think I picked them up in during NUFS. And NUFS was basically an opportunity for me to grow up as a vocalist or as a singer from scratch to whatever expertise I built up in those 2 years. So I think as a vocal mentor, Chandy was the best teacher that I could have asked for. And we still keep in touch, and we talk about the rehearsals and the music that we were doing back then. It didn't work out in India because we don't have that kind of audience who's warmed up to that kind of singing, because choral singing and jazz vocals are something which India has yet to warm up to. So I think eventually, hopefully, people come around and appreciate it also.
And as you just said, this was the first time you did vocal harmony and sang with a group
Mhm.
and, were
Yeah.
dealing with singing with different pitches. How
Mhm.
difficult for you was it in your earliest days to, concentrate on your notes and not get
Yeah.
sidetracked?
Absolutely. It was very challenging because I remember when we did our first harmony, I used to like close my ears and, just try to focus on my voice initially because I would get distracted or thrown off with the other voices around me. But then eventually it became a part of our systems that, okay, no matter what you hear, what you're singing must be something which is unaffected by, by something, by an external force or external, you know, um, body. So I guess that was thanks to the Nuff's experience that we got used to doing harmonies, and we were doing some complex harmonies which were like 11s and 13s and some crazy chords which we had never heard before, and we had to sing those odd notes sometimes, and even though it's not making sense to you while you do it as a solo, but when you come as an ensemble, it all makes sense and it all falls into picture. So sound check also would be a major issue because we need to be, since we're used to hearing all the voices, sometimes we used to get thrown off with the sound checks because if one part goes off, we like the entire sound changes. So it's all about adapting to whatever situation you're thrown off. So I guess unlearning the bad habits that we got used to, and just keep updating our ears and train them. That was what was happening in Nuts, and it was great for our musical careers individually. Yeah.
As you were getting introduced to these different forms of music, choral music, jazz music, did you ever
Mhm.
struggle in distinguishing different genres of music? So, like, for example, maybe choral influences might come in classical or
Mhm.
things like that?
In identifying the differences, or
In
you mean
presentation.
in presentation?
Mm.
Yeah. So that, of course, that's a very good question. So every time we pick up something, we tend to inculcate that in our singing or in the kind of music that we do. But it's very important to to draw the boundaries. For instance, it's very easy for a Carnatic vocalist to do all those jatis and in playback singing, but that's not really appreciated, or that's not something that's always considered overdone. So you need to eliminate that every single time you're rendering something else. For instance, we would do a Carnatic song in Nuts, and then we would do a jazz number, a jazz ballad, and then we would do a pop number right after that. So it was very important to switch sensibilities of music every time we change over to a song, because otherwise you're just mixing up everything and it just becomes an avial, which we don't want. So it's very important to have that clarity of how much is needed, and how much where to draw the line and where to stop, and all the silences which are very important in between the music, because as a passionate music lover, it's very it's very natural for someone to overdo stuff because that's how much they love it. But you have to realize that sometimes silencing all those extra notes makes so much of difference to the music, and music kind of lies in those silences, not in the entirety of the musical notes, which was said by Mozart. So something that I realized that maybe, yeah, that makes so much sense. Silences are even more important than filling up the entire song with extra notes or extra jatis or extra gamakams. So sometimes it's important to underdo stuff, because when you do less, that's actually more. So that's philosophy, something which I learned, with the experience of Nuts, and it's very important to bifurcate these things and be aware of where you're switching sensibilities, and that's why it's very important to listen to different genres so that you can identify it and then make efforts to segregate it. Yeah,
Going
no
back
worries.
to, we were talking about vocal harmony, and
Hmm.
you produced a brilliant cover of Mary Did You Know, I believe in
Hmm.
2016, which
Yeah,
incorporated elements of a cappella singing and vocal harmony.
yeah,
But
yeah.
since then, I don't think you've quite explored that space. Is that
Hmm.
something you
Yeah.
want to do in the future?
I would love to. In fact, I love a cappella songs and I love choral arrangements. But it's just that I think the market in India and especially on YouTube, the kind of stuff that you cater to the masses is not exactly that. And I think if I find the right audience for it, or if I find the right song with with the right opportunity, I would probably do it.
Mm.
But as you can see that Mary did got the least amount of response on my channel compared to other stuff, which is why I probably stopped it, because there's no point in doing it if something is not appreciated. Although I'm a believer of not being affected by the response, but I feel like while I'm building up my fan base, or as an artist, someone who wants to have his presence on YouTube, it's important to first cater to the masses and then develop a big fan base, and then bring out your opinion, your voices, and something that you stand up for. So eventually that's the plan. I'm going to do a lot of a cappellas and vocal choral arrangements, but when probably I have a good fan base wherein, so first I'm looking at the numbers, which is probably not the right thing to do, but I don't know. I mean, everyone is doing that, and I guess I have to succumb to that bit as a beginner. So probably that way. But of course, I love doing harmonies, and I would love to do it eventually if someone comes along who is willing to, because it's a lot of effort, and you know how difficult it gets, and even mixing those songs, arranging, it's a lot of hard work. And then when it goes unnoticed, you kind of feel hurt, because you put in a lot of effort in it. So when the right time comes, I'll eventually do a lot of them, because it's my personal go-to music. And Jacob Collier is an artist that I look up to, and on that department, because
100%.
so when you yeah, so I think listening to him, you feel like, wow, this is something which I really dig, and this is something I would like to work towards, aiming at getting the kind of sound I would like to produce eventually in future. So I'm just learning, and then probably when the right time comes, I'll produce some of that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and during this time, like you're finishing up KM, or like just a bit after, like 2012 to 2014. During this time, you're singing with bands on Music Mojo, which is produced by Kappa TV, a famous TV company in the Malayalam industry. And initially, you started off with Staccato, and then I believe you went to Sanskriti. And yeah, the latter was a band that you founded with somebody who has come on this podcast, actually, composer Sanjay.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
In that interview, Sanjay was telling me how you two, you and him, wanted to form a band that had member representation from all across India, hence the name Sanskriti. But why specifically take that approach?
Because when you have a global scale, or when you have a large canvas, artists coming from different places, when you create something, it becomes all the more huge, or influenced, or rather, it has a bigger canvas, wherein you're featuring artists from Jammu Kashmir, and then he brings his own flavor to it, and then you have an artist from Tamil Nadu, then from Kerala, one from Maharashtra, one from Punjab. And when their ideas and when their music kind of blends together, that's when magic happens, I would say. And Indian culture and Sanskriti is so rich because of its diversity. So that's one thing which we were very particular about, that if we create something, it has to be it has to be big, it has to be Indian, and it has to be original. And that can happen only when you feature artists from all across the country. And so I think that was the idea behind the name as well, Sanskriti. And folk music is something which, again, is a very deep-rooted thing in each culture. So we used to do a lot of folk numbers as well, like Punjabi one. We did Lamni. We did Shambhala, which was an amalgamation of Sufi, Carnatic, and just random stuff merging with each other. So I think Sanjay and I are very crazy like that, and I call him my musical brother. So we would just discuss all the music, and we'll break down all the sessions. Of even Jacob Collier, we would just trip over his stuff, and Indian classical, you name a genre, we would just discuss it, and just we would crave for knowledge, and that kind of the idea was just to create something that we could, in our capacity to whatever extent, So that's why the concept Sanskriti. Yeah.
In a way, was that experience sort of like a culmination of everything you'd learned because it
Yeah,
incorporated so many genres?
it did. It ended up being that because
Hmm.
people coming from different sensibilities was just, it was a culmination of all that coming together. It was very colorful. It had all sorts of moods and all sorts of flavors to it. So which was incredible.
Yeah, and around just a year or two before Sanskriti happened, probably
Hmm.
one of the biggest moments in your life happened, Moongil Thottam. A
Yes.
beautiful, beautiful song from Cuddle. And,
Yeah, man.
from 2012, 2013, 14, 15, 16, you're getting many calls from some of the industry's top music directors, AR
Hmm.
Rahman, Haris Jairaj, T. Iman, and many other such composers. But
Yeah.
after a few months where you felt you weren't getting as many calls, you
Hmm.
decide to move up to Mumbai. And so I'm wondering, was this more an artistic decision to just sort of mix things up, or something that you did with your career in mind and to try and reinvigorate your career?
Right. So it was like I'm just trying to recollect all the things that I have to, frame and say. So I won't say it was an artistic or a decision necessarily only on the basis of the work that I was getting,
Mm.
but it was on the lines of somehow just relocating myself so that I could get a different perspective. Because sometimes when you're at a place and when you're doing the same thing over and over again, you kind of get worn out, or you get rusted because of because you're not getting you're doing if you're doing the same thing continuously, you also kind of get bored. And that's what similar to that something happened, that I hit saturation when it comes to exploring vocally, or even when it comes to language wise, that I think artistically I've reached a spot wherein I was starting to doubt things, if this is something that I'm meant to do, or if I've hit the maximum, or if this is the maximum thing that I've reached, I guess. So I was just testing my limits, and I was just testing the waters with different industries, and I would travel to Mumbai every now and then and see how things are. And I was just probably thinking that, okay, if this could be the right thing to do, then might as well give it a shot. If it's not, then I can always come back to Chennai, because I had done around some 80 songs in the movies, including Tamil, Telugu, Kannada, Malayalam. And after that, the frequency of calls that I would get for recordings also reduced. So I treated it as a sign that, okay, maybe it's a sign from the universe where you have become too comfortable or complacent, and it's time for you to move to a different industry, and challenge yourself to probably outdo yourself and try something different. So I guess I just treated it as a sign, I would say. And secondly, when it comes to my mother tongue, Marathi, I was also getting a lot of opportunities from Pune and Mumbai because of that. Because a lot of musicians found out that a Marathi boy has done all these Tamil songs, and he was launched by AR Rahman sir. So they were also willing to work with me. So that work was also flowing in. So I thought, might as well, this is the right time to move my base to Mumbai and see how it goes. So yeah, that's how it happened. But again, it was not a big deal. It was not something that I decided, or it was not even something. It was just an impulsive decision, like how I had decided to come to Chennai. And ultimately, yeah, that worked. And 1 year of living in Mumbai, and I got a beautiful break. So I guess, again, then it was, if I hadn't moved to Mumbai, then wouldn't have happened. So I guess you should always consider possibilities of expanding your horizons or whatever, or your possibilities of work. So yeah, it was just a random decision.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I see a lot of parallels between what you're saying right now and what Rahman sir has said in his interviews, where he
Hmm.
says, if he does the same thing for 3 years, he'll switch it up. And that's why now
Yeah.
he's into producing and directing and all that.
Yeah. 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 After 25 years, though, like 25
Mhm.
years of music direction, and then now he's switching to different genres, and it's great that he's doing that, because as artists also, we're human beings. Yeah, if you do the same shit again and again, you eventually get bored. So you need to change it up a little bit. So I think, and this is a very personal thing of mine as well. Like, it's my nature probably that every time I do something for, let's say, a year or two, I get bored of it, then I want to do something different. But borderline ADHD, I would say. No, just kidding. But somewhat of that sort, where I get bored and okay, now I'm done with this. I have to do this now. So, like, if it comes to changing streams or fields in studies as well. So till seventh grade, I was, into drawing, and I was always fascinated about architecture and sketching, and I still am. But that was a hobby which I explored for those 3 years. Did a lot of drawings and sketching. And then I was like, okay, I'm done with drawing now. I want to do something else. And then my focus shifted to maths, and maths and physics was really intriguing at that point of time. So 11th and 12th, I studied that, gave all the entrance examinations, IIT, JEE, AIEEE, everything. I got selected also for EEE. But then I was like, no, I'm done with maths now. I should switch to biology. So that's how I chose biotechnology. And then those 3 years of biotech, was the hardest, academically hardest time of my life. And then I was like, no, man, what did I do? What did I fall into? And why do I do this to myself? So then I was like, okay, I'm sick of biology now and biotechnology. So let's just change. Let's just change to music. So after doing all of that, I finally came to conclusion that, you know what, let's just do what, comes naturally to you. And then, see what happens. And then music happened. And that's when I realized that, okay, music is my ultimate calling. But as an artist also, music and then all the other things, as I said, filmmaking and direction is something which is the topmost goal, or rather passion, I would say. So there's so much to do. There's so much happening in cultural fields that, like, you can do so much. The possibilities are endless. All you have to do is just tap into that and see if it works for you. I'm always up for trying and venturing out to different worlds, and it's just, if it's not meant for you, it's going to teach you something that you might apply in other things in life. So hence I always like to switch things and change them a little bit.
And you've sung more than 100 songs across your career, and unfortunately we don't quite have the time to go through all of them, but I'd like to ask you this. I find it interesting that some of the songs that you sung are essentially second versions of the same song. So, for example, two of the songs that you sang in Godfather, Nine and Kanna and Deepavali, are direct recreations of two songs from the 2006 Tamil film Varalaru.
Right.
Likewise, you've sang Kalyana Vayase, which was...
Yes.
Right,
Correct.
exactly.
In Tamil,
yeah. Which was initially, in the case of Kalyana Vayase, initially sung by Anirudh. Does it help or hurt when you hear a different version of the same song before you record it yourself? Does it apply pressure, or is it a good guide?
No, I think it's always. I have never let it hurt me, because every time you hear a different rendition, or if your voice, let's say, gets replaced by a different singer for some reason, then I believe that it was something that was meant to be. All you can do is just give your take on it, and how you can make it better, and how you can contribute your creativity into this. So that's the only way you can be sane about it. Otherwise, you end up being jealous, or you feel bad about it, or you feel like, why am I getting secondhand work and all of that? But I think I'm way past all of that. And I think whatever is coming to you is just an opportunity for you to prove yourself, or to show the world what you can do with it. So I've never had those kind of feelings, and I'm only grateful for whatever songs I'm getting to sing. And the fact that I'm getting those songs itself is a big deal. Is something which is keeping me sane, and which is what I'm grateful for. So none of those feelings ever come to my mind. And I think also I've grown as an artist, where after dealing with a lot of rejections, and after your voice being replaced by a lot of other artists, which has happened to everyone, I'm sure. So by the time you have arrived in the industry, you feel like these things are not going to matter eventually. What's going to matter is how much your practice met the right opportunity and what came out. So I guess no regrets, or no hard feelings about those things.
Just recently, after so many years, singing so many successful songs and establishing yourself as a very competent playback singer, to say the least, you took a little detour and you are a lyricist in 99 songs for Hamnawa,
Mhm.
if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken.
Yeah.
Uh, could you talk us through that experience?
Yeah. So, as I said, I like to venture out into other artistic fields, and writing is something which I'd never planned that I would probably be writing about stuff or be writing lyrics. But it was just one thing that I always thought about, that okay, maybe I can do this, maybe not. If someone asks me to, puts me in this spot, I can maybe do a good job, a decent job. And that happened with Rahman sir, that we were just dubbing a song for 99 songs, and sir tells me Shasha and I were recording this, and he just told us that can you guys come up with words for a lover. So I just gave him a long list of all the words that you can address your lover as. And then Hamnawa is something which he really liked, and he was like, "Okay, I like that word. Now, can you rhyme that with other words, similar words, and make some sense out of it and fit it into this meter?" And then I was like, "Yeah, of course I can do that. We can give it a shot." So Shasha and I together, we thought of most of the phrases and everything that we could do, and it was a very difficult song.
Yeah.
Uh, so uh, so we just somehow tried to fit it into the meter, and then for rough reference we just gave it whatever we could think of in that moment. And then he liked it. He instantly liked the sound of it. So he was like, "Okay, that's it. That's the final lyrics." I was like, "What? Are you serious? I mean, we'll have to probably rethink about what we have written. It was just an accident. You can't." But then he believes that when you are at the crunch time, or when you're in the spot, you have this pressure of giving your best, and that's when you give the best output. So he believes that, and that's why he often puts us in spots like that, and he would just play with us, and he would just he'll be like, "Okay, just do this," and if he likes it, he keeps it. Otherwise, you can always change it. But yeah, so that's how it happened, so simply and so instinctively, that I didn't even think that I would be writing lyrics for a song ever. And it just happened accidentally, and it was a beautiful accident, I would say. But yeah, that's how it happened. And now I'm considering writing as well, like how I'm a singer now. I might eventually start writing more often.
You've done so many forms of art, but another feather in your cap was public speaking. And you gave a
Mhm.
TED talk in 2018,
Yeah.
if I'm not mistaken. And there's a
Yes,
few
you're right.
interesting points that I wanted to touch on. Even
Sure.
throughout this interview, you've talked a lot about destiny.
Hmm.
So, in your view, how do you think destiny is formed, and how does it manifest itself into reality?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. So I keep saying that I'm a destiny's child. Like, for instance, all the things that I had planned for myself never worked out, and something else happens that is completely different or drastically opposite of what I had planned it. So I had realized one thing, that everything is meant to be, and your plans are not God's plans, and the vice versa. So I started believing in this thing called, okay, if I'm meant to do certain things in my lifetime, I'll have to do that, because to maintain that karmic balance, you have to go through certain interactions or transactions with certain souls that probably you owed them from the previous births, or the series of the births that you know you have lived. So it's just a calculation that the universe does, and the law. I believe I'm a strong believer of law of attraction, and I believe that everything that your subconscious mind also thinks of, makes your reality, and makes it into manifests. So I think reading about all these things, and talking about the divine timing and law of attraction, I've come to this agreement or belief that you cannot control anything. All you can control is your thoughts. So what you're thinking is going to matter is going to matter the most. So I've started rejoicing living in the present, which is the only reality that there is. So if you're trying to plan something, if you're trying to, let's say, have a goal, that okay, I have to do this, then that's something which might not be meant for you. So rather than making those plans, how about going with the flow of the universe and just enjoying those plans which were probably meant for you? Of course, you can't be delusional. You can't be sitting at home all the time, and you can't be living like a saint, wherein, okay, I don't know anything to do, I'm just going to meditate and just go with it. You can't do that. But What I'm trying to say is that whatever you can control, you can, probably, plan it out and set short-term goals for yourself, but not have long-term goals or, different attributes wherein you just decide for yourself that, okay, this is something which I want to do, or this is something which is going to be good for me. You can never plan these things out, because I've realized no matter how much you plan, what has to happen will happen. I mean, look at 2020 for that matter. I mean, all our plans, got screwed royally, and and nobody can take charge and even try to change these things, because everything is under control by a supreme power called universe, and universe is just doing its job by cleansing whatever damage we have caused into the nature, Mother Earth, and it's just backlashing and backfiring. So I think, and I'm also a strong believer of karma, and I believe that, okay, whatever we are going through, probably we have asked for it, or probably we deserved it. So I don't know. I'm like, it's just a mixture of all these things. But yeah, I've realized that, okay, maybe destiny is, plays its role. But how I would put it also is that you can work on your, skills, your qualities, whatever you think you're born with, or you can, acquire a quality by reading, or by, acquiring whatever you want to, and brush it up, and then prepare yourself until you're 18 years old, and then let nature do its job and take you where you're probably meant to be. So when your preparation meets the opportunity, that's what decides your fate, and your fate is ultimately your destiny. So I think if you're prepared at the right time, at the right opportunity, then you end up acquiring it, and it's all about how you perform in that moment. So instead of focusing about all the other unnecessary things that you would rather control, it's best to let it go and just thinking and enjoy the present moment. So I guess, yeah, that's a big fat answer to your question. I speak a lot, man. I need to cut it down.
No,
and
no,
just
no.
put it out.
It's a blessing for this podcast.
I'm glad that you have the time.
No.
But I hope the listeners agree with you. Or they'll just
Of course they will.
Like, wow, this guy talks too much.
From one dense topic to another dense topic, another sort of facet of your TED talk was talking about the real you versus the fake you. And you said, the real you wants things like happiness and purity, while the fake you wants things like validation and attention. Do you think the fake you is something that's natural to humans, or something that's constructed and forced into us by society?
I think it's forced into by society or by social media, because now every time you showcase something, you are basically setting an example for an audience out there who's going to look at it and who's going to be like, wow, that looks cool, maybe I should try that. So every time you showcase something, you are kind of intoxicating the entire platform by setting up probably the wrong example. Like, for instance, how a lot of social issues that we have faced, like racism for that matter, because Britishers inculcated these things, or because they normalized the idea of racism and dividing us in our castes. Because of that, we have been following, and it's still so deeply ingrained in our society that we are still stuck up with that. So I think that's the thing. When you let someone else dictate what is good for you, or what is probably the best for you, that's when you start becoming fake. So it's never good to compare yourself, or set someone else as your idol or your inspiration. And of course, you can learn things, but don't assume that that's the ultimate goal that you have to probably achieve. You might have a different journey. You might like to showcase different things. So never treat social media as something that is the ultimate truth or gospel, target that you need to have. So yeah, that's where the fakeness comes from, wherein society has created so much of illusion between what's good for you, what's not for you, and they are so judgy about things. And if you do a certain thing, you are normal apparently, and if you follow the herd, if you follow the norm, that's when you fit into that into that norm, which is now. But who decides what's normal or what's good for you? Which is why the entire the concept of copying someone or fitting into the norm. It's just so flawed. The system itself is flawed. So which is why I personally detest that there's nothing called as absolutely right or wrong. You can decide for yourself what's good for you as long as it doesn't harm anyone. And which is why you need not succumb to your social expectations or your social norms. You can set your own norms, and it's absolutely fine if it makes you happy. Yeah.
Yeah, so speaking of social media and sort of
Mm-hmm.
coming into the last segment of my podcast, or perhaps the second last segment, on social media, you announced that you're going to be releasing a new single on Thursday
Mm-hmm.
called Maraban,
Yes.
which would
Yes.
have released already by the time this podcast is out, because I plan to release this on Friday. But
Nice.
just in general, what can you tell us about that song? What can we look forward to?
So it's a beautiful song with, I have sung this with Pavani Pandey, who is a wonderful vocalist herself. And it's an EDM track and very modern and upbeat number, which is very contrary from the kind of songs that I have sung. So I hope you like it, and not sure how people are going to respond to it, but I have done my best, and let's see how you guys like it. But it's a very it's a dope number, and I hope people like it. Yeah.
So in general, in your life of experimentation and in your life of everlasting curiosity, what does the future hold for you?
I have no clue. As I said, I don't like to plan things. I have no idea what's going to happen. I might become a director. I might become an editor. I might become a videographer. You never know. I'm open to all the possibilities. I could be, for all you know, I could be, doing a research on some another coronavirus that comes up in future. Sitting in a lab or doing something, because I've studied biotechnology as well and I finished the course. I'm still eligible for that, but you never know what the future holds for you. So I'm just going to leave that envelope empty and be like, okay, whatever happens, we'll see. We shall see.
Before I move on to my traditional final question, you are a wonderful, wonderful singer, and I will be absolutely, criticized to the core if I don't have you sing today.
Of course. I would love to sing.
Yeah, and you sang many songs on your show with singer Deepak 2 days ago from the recording of this
Yes,
podcast.
that's
And
right. Yeah.
I'd recommend anybody listening to this podcast to go check that out. I'll leave that in the
Sounds
description. Perhaps though, I was thinking we could add on to the songs that you sang then. And if you don't mind, I have a few requests myself.
Absolutely. Let's go for it. And I forgot to answer one of your earlier questions regarding Moongil Thottam, that it was a life-changing, song for me. So I guess to answer that, and I think continue singing that song itself. So as I said, I mean, singing was something which was just a hobby, and I didn't know that I would be singing for Mani Ratnam sir's film in Kadal, and Rahman sir would be launching me. So I think it's a dream come true. And I thank my stars and the universe for this opportunity, that it somehow, manifested it. And thanks to Rahman sir for teaching me and guiding me through it. And all the credits to him for pulling it out of me. So, and because I realized my strength and potential as a singer only after that recording. So I think thanks, just a lot of gratitude towards Rahman sir for launching me and for, dropping me into this, big ocean of, musical notes. So here's singing Moongil Thottam for you all.
Yeah.
Moongil Thottam, Mooli Havasam, Neranjamoni Paadingido, Paunamiravu, Panivilum Kaadu, Pottadi Pada, Pomkuda Podinada. இது போதும் எனக்கு, இது போதுமே, வேறென்ன வேணும், நீ போதுமே. இது போதும் எனக்கு, இது போதுமே, வேறென்ன வேணும், நீ போதுமே. மூங்கில் தோட்டம், மூலிகை வாசம், Neranjamoni பாடுகிறோம்.
Wow, that was absolutely brilliant. So, if I may request a song,
Yes,
I think
absolutely. Go for it.
it's only apt that we start with the song that got us to know one another, which is Silanal from
Absolutely.
Titanic.
Yes. Sare ga pare ga sare da sa pa da sare ga. Sare ga pare ga sare da sa pa da sare ga. Ni sare ma dha ni re sa ni da pa ma re pa ma. Sare ga pa sare ga re sa pa ga re sare ga. Sare ga pa da sare ga re sa da pa ga re ga. Ga re ga pa ma pa ni dha ni ga. காண்பது எல்லாம் நிஜமில்லை நிறந்தது என்றே சொல்லில்லை சில நாள் வாழும் உறவும் ஒன்று பல நாள் வாழும் உறவும் ஒன்று சகி Yeah.
So the second song I'd like to ask is, because you're on this podcast now, and the first episode was with composer Sanjay, and I'd like to, if you, I know it's quite a while ago, so if you don't remember the song, that's completely fine. But
we'll see about it.
E Dile
What song
Ashikito?
is that? Of course, I remember the song. ऐ दिले आशिकी को रहनुमाए सलाम दे दुनिया ऐ दिले आशिकी को रहनुमाए सलाम दे दुनिया है सरफ दारा राहे सला दारा दुनिया इल्जाम देती है ये दुनिया बदनाम करती है ये दुनिया क्या रखा है तुझ में क्यों एहसान करती है ये दुनिया ऐ दिले आशिकी.
And then one final request on my side.
Yes.
I'll leave it up to you, but any Carnatic song.
Yes, absolutely. I love this composition, Pakkala Nilabadi.
You sang that for Nafs, if I'm not wrong, right?
Yes, we did. That's the first Carnatic song I picked up. Yeah, man, incredible, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I love the ragam also. Hara Hara Priya, I believe. Pakkala Nilabadi Pakkala Nilabadi Pakkala Nilabadi Goli chenu chaka baga del parada Pakkala Nilabadi. And you can hear the dogs barking, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so man, I was just hoping that nobody interrupts this, session. But
I'm just wondering, did you ever consider a career in classical music?
No, I didn't, man, because trust me, it requires a lot of patience, it requires a lot of dedication. And I think when you realize that, okay, when you're 21 years old and you understood that you want to do playback singing for good, then I think it's already too late to start off as a classical artist, because it's very important, the kind of intense seasoning and learning and foundation that you need to lay out for classical singing. It's really intense. You can't just one fine day when you're 25 or 30 pick it up and then excel in it. I mean, I personally believe that it's too late for me to pick it up now, because also I'm not the kind of person who would who would be so apt for it, I would say, because my personality, as I said, I like to change things here and there, and that perseverance and that kind of dedication, that kind of continuity is very extremely important for classical singing. And I don't think I have it in me to sustain something for so long and not be bored with it. So as much as I love it, as much as I love listening to it, but I know how much of hard work goes into it, which I'm not, I think I'm drained out, and I don't have it in me to invest that much energy into it and starting from scratch. So I refrain from it, and as long as I can, learn it then and there, and do whatever little I can with it, I'm happy with being just a listener of Hindustani classical or Carnatic. Yeah.
All right, then I'd like to end this episode with a traditional closer. And you sort of alluded to the answer to this question earlier on, but I'll let you answer it anyways. What's on your playlist right now?
Right now, there's this beautiful song called Vadukala Vellari Pravu Vaku Konda Muttana Kettu Tulliyana Daradara Niyam Tadana Priyare Niyam Tadana. It's from this movie called Sufiyam Sujatayum, Malayalam. M. Jayachandran sir's music, and featured on beautiful Aditi Rao Hedri. You should hear the song. And Tumbi Tullal is another favorite, which I'm tripping on, like on loop. And of course, the Hindi soundtrack of Dil Bechara is the entire soundtrack is on loop. Yeah.
All right, so I think we'll finish off there. Thank you for your time. And thank you to the listeners for tuning in. If you're not following Abhay on his social media yet, please make sure to go to the description and check the links out. Thank you so very much.
Thanks. Thank you so much. Thanks, man.
Well, that was Abhay Jodhpurkar on today's episode of the Indoencers Podcast. You can find us at the Indoencers, spelled THEINDOENCERS, on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, or you can use the links in the description. Likewise, you can find our homepage at theindoencers.wordpress.com or through the link in the description. Make sure to subscribe to the Indoencers Podcast on your favorite podcasting platform. Thank you once again, and we'll see you next time.